Okay, good to go. Okay. Oh. So, all right. Thank you all for being back. We're now moving forward with the second panel discussion, this time around on education. We did a pretty good introductory, I would say, introduction to this panel on the previous panel. But I want to start with presenting you who do we have here? What are the experts that we now, and today we have on this FinTech education panel? And I'll start, of course, from the lady. We have Professor Daniela Bobeva, currently a professor in personal finance at VUZF University, Varna Economic University. Correct me if I'm mistaking the
Plovdiv University.
All right.
Varna University.
And others,
5.
I would say. Okay, 5. Nice. That's an astonishing number, I would say. A huge expert, a former Bulgarian Deputy Prime Minister. She has served in several cabinet level positions, including Minister of Trade and Economic Cooperation, as well as the Foreign Investment Agency. She was vice president in the Bank C Trade and Development Bank, and served for a decade as the head of international division of the Bulgarian National Bank.
13 years in the central bank.
Nice. All right. Then once again we have Associate Professor Deyan Radev. I just want to mention once again briefly about his background with 15 years of experience in Goethe University Frankfurt, University of Bonn, and the European Central Bank. He received Germany's Best PhD Dissertation Prize in Capital Markets in 2014 for his work on systemic risk assessment, which actually these systemic risk indicators that he created are in daily operation use at the European Central Bank. He's, and I could now announce it once again, he's the director of the CEE Center for Digital Finance. And last but not least by importance, we have the industry representative, Vasily Piatidis, who is the marketing specialist at Streamflow. He and his company are really very active within our ecosystem and in the field of FinTech education. They always contribute to the association's education initiatives. Namely, the last one was a FinTech Career Day at the Sofia University, St. Clement Ohridsky. He's genuinely interested in education, obviously, and I'm really looking forward to see what is his perspective as being part of the industry. So with this relatively quick introduction of you guys, I want to first start with Daniela Bobeva, Professor Daniela Bobeva. Just because you were here in our audience listening to the previous panel, what is your take on it? What do you think about what the others just said? And is this really applicable coming from academic perspective?
Let me first of all thank you very much for the invitation, and I admire the energy, the courage, and enthusiasm of Georgi in doing all these things, and I really think he's a treasure for FinTech Association and for ourselves. He's always capable to generate our enthusiasm also, so thank you very much for doing all this and getting us together. So you shouldn't ask me this question because I don't like regulations. And I think that in financial services, freedom is the main asset. And the fact you show all these graphs, they come without regulation. So do you expect that all these graphs will go upper if we start regulating? Although most of the fintech services which are related with payment services are regulated now, as we know. So what remained not to be regulated is a very small space, and we shouldn't squeeze it. So, but if we are going to regulate in the European Union, and particularly in Bulgaria, so we'll need a lot of additional education for us. One of the major topics to teach is to explain why we need this regulation, what kind of problems these regulations will resolve. Second, we have to get them through the text of those regulations because they're extremely complicated and they are not clear stuff. So, the students need a lot of energy to spend on understanding them. And this is not only for the upcoming regulation in cryptocurrencies, it is the legal tradition of the European Union to have very big regulative documents and quite different from our legal framework here. So it's difficult to explain. Definitely, we'll need more and more teaching for the new rules of the game in several areas. And we have to try to provide the synergy between the real practice in Bulgaria and the new regulations. I don't like between directives and regulations. I would prefer directives because regulation is applied everywhere in the same way, but we have different financial systems in each and every country, so the way to adjust is the directive. So there is a big debate on this, but Bulgarian financial market is different from the UK market, so putting this, one size doesn't fit all. So that's in my view.
All right, thank you so much. Now, I don't want to really get into this controversy whether regulation is needed or not, because obviously here in the panel we have from one side a person, a former Bulgarian National Bank just employee, part of the Bulgarian National Bank, and then we have an expert in systemic risk here in the panel, namely Deyan. I will leave this controversy for another panel, and would like to work on a bit on the role of the academy within regulation, and how could the academy change the regulations somehow? Is that even possible, Deyan?
So it is possible, and it is being done, because even at really the level of working groups at ministries and the parliament, where you evaluate, where you introduce new regulation, you have to show the impact on the economy. So there is some analysis, hopefully rigorous academic analysis, and at least in my field of research, that is the main goal, to evaluate the effect of reforms. I'm doing research not only on fintech, but also on bank regulation. And there it's not that much to suggest new reforms or how to change the letter of the law, but to evaluate with rigorous methods whether what the regulators, the authorities have envisaged really happen. And this is where business data, where institutional data comes into place from many countries, and is especially useful for countries that are planning to introduce some regulation. And the main goal is, okay, I mentioned to evaluate the impact, but it's very difficult to put a figure on. This will reduce the revenue of companies with exactly that much, so we shouldn't have that strict regulation. It should be a bit laxer. It is very difficult to fine-tune that much academic research to answer those questions. Right now, the international research community on banking regulation is trying to find whether regulation actually leads to improvement, or if it doesn't, what part of the regulation should be abolished. So splitting the what Professor Bobeva said, the sub-reforms in the laws, and this is actually one of my papers on systemic risk. We're looking how bank resolution reforms around the globe, what their effect is on systemic risk in the global banking system. And there we actually split here. I don't see many of my students, but I always mention the Bank Recovery and Resolution Directive. This directive became operational in the EU in 2015. And then everyone had to implement it with some gratis period, what Professor Bobeva said. So it is very difficult at that point in 2016 to evaluate the effect of this regulation, because everyone had to have it.
And because we didn't have so many bankruptcies of banks to
Yes,
check this.
Exactly. So what our approach is to look at measures of systemic risk, which became popular in the last 15 years. And what is important about all those banking regulations is that they don't come out of the blue. Usually some parts of those regulations are implemented in different countries at different point of time. Usually the US is the leading, as a financial market place, they're leading in the regulation, but they also don't implement all features. So what we use and what could be used is to check, we have the final text with sub-items. So which country has implemented some of those sub-items before the implementation? And then with this variation, you can detect the effect then on systemic risk. Because for some regulations, they are marketed that they have to improve financial stability. And actually, in my research, we show exactly the opposite, that the stricter, so that goes in favor of what Professor Bobeva says, the stricter the regulation, the more negative the impact on systemic risk. It increases systemic risk. And it has different reasons why it does it, mainly because some of the regulations, they are targeted at individual bank insolvency, not at the global systemic level. But it is implied that if it improves the individual stability, it will improve the global stability for the system. But it's assumed, it's not tested, and that's what we test, and in this way. And this is how academic research could be used to evaluate reforms.
All right, understood. I don't want to really, once again, deep dive into this regulation topic. What is the balance between both of them? I do know that you, Vasily, you're positive or you would support what Professor Bobeva just said. And if you want to just elaborate on this, you're more welcome to do it, but just only for a minute or two, because you already saw it takes a lot of time if we deep dive into this theme about no regulation or
yes, we have to go to the education.
Yes, education. That's right. So about the role of industry in the education, what is exactly do you find it, and in specific from your company's perspective, where are you situated when talking about education, and what is really your place when talking about FinTech education?
I'm not going to dive into the regulation, but I'll say that regulations usually do more harm than good. And I'd say that we would know that if we were taught at the universities economic history. Starting from even recent events, the 2008 crisis, regulation that took place regarding the minorities getting approved loans, I would know that. It is important to know the mistake of the past, so we won't repeat them. So that is a thing that we should consider within the academia. I've never seen such courses, at least not in many universities and not many programs. This is important. Regarding the education, we've heard multiple times today the word ecosystem. Yes, the Bulgarian ecosystem is thriving, but without even discussing regulation, the biggest threat is the brain drain. And you know very well that everybody within the BFA is doing something for that, right? And I think it's time to do it within the academia in a form of a synergy. It is important to us. To better explain my thesis, there's a brain drain in Bulgaria, and we need people to work. And it is not financially viable for us companies paying thousands of leva or euros just to hire a person. Not for this person, but for an HR company. Not that we don't appreciate them, but this goes to show that there are not people in the market that can fill in the open job positions. And we would like, as well, I think Mr. Dimitrov said earlier, to produce our own people in Bulgaria. Even though I am not personally Bulgarian, even though most of the people in our company, they're not Bulgarians, we do want to work with Bulgarians, and we do need the Bulgarians within our business. That being said, we need to establish programs starting from bachelor's and master's that would accommodate the needs of the businesses. And not only they will boost and help this ecosystem to thrive, but at the same time are providing the students, which are the future candidates, job candidates, with what they need, the tools to get a better job, a higher paying job, and at the same time, they're not competitive only within the national level, but on a regional level. Because Europe is not international, it's regional. Europe is ours, right? This is my thesis. We need to offer courses specially curated for fintech companies, and what we're missing, I think, at the same time is more English programs. Because you know very well that if a person does not speak proper English, cannot participate within the panel, and certainly cannot follow the conversation we're having now. And not only that, but within this multinational environment that we're working, which is coming from the effect, which is the effect of globalization and capitalism, one needs to speak English to get a good paying job, and companies need people, employees, that speak English so they can communicate. This is important. So to me, there has to be a synergy between the academia and the private sector, namely fintech in our case, so we can produce our own people. And at the same time, programs in the English language. It is very important to us.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, Professor Bobeva.
Perfect. This is what they're doing. So they get us professors in Sofia VUZF and Sofia University, and we invite them to our courses, and we change our perception through this kind of fora. So we are trying to do exactly this, to get together the academia and FinTech Association and the companies. But we have several problems in our educational system. May I just point briefly?
Just briefly, please.
I introduced FinTech 3 years ago in baccalaureate degree in Plovdiv University. This is a state-owned university. I'm head of the department there on economic sciences because we have a lot of sciences there. In order to introduce a new subject like FinTech, there is a big competition because the number of students is squeezing and each professor wants to defend his subject. So it is very hard, particularly in state-owned universities, to introduce something very new. So private universities, VUZF, I'm coming from, they're more open to new subjects, but again, you have competition, what you are going to introduce. So first problem is to introduce this subject. The second problem is which level you should teach, because I think I'm the only one who is teaching FinTech in earlier. Most of you teach in master's degree.
Also bachelor's this year.
And bachelor this year.
Yeah.
So I have more than 3 years experience with the bachelor degree. It depends very much when you start. So, and which subjects they have to be taught in order to start. So I'm teaching accounting and finance too. So these are 50, 60 people in students in Plovdiv University. In the last grade, we are lost there. These people because they pass through all this finance, all this risk perception, risk regulation, risk limitation. They don't have any appetite for risk. They don't trade with the cryptocurrency. They don't use fintech services. Among 40, 50 people, no one had a wallet, digital wallet. And there are people who are just exiting from the system. So why? Because the whole finance education is based on risk. Risk is something very bad. Let's control, let's put it in the corner. So, fintech is something about freedom. It's about doing new stuff, not be limited. So it is too late, in my view, to teach fintech in the last grade. We have to start from the beginning. And should be not just separated subject, it should be in all subjects related with finance and economics. Not only finance, also economics. So it is built on. From the experience of the master's degree, that's beautiful, because we have just started in VUZF the master's degree with the support of the FinTech Association, and my fellow colleague is also teaching there. So you have such a different society. By the way, 40 people, more than 40, which is big success for our area, economics and finance, to have so many students in this masters, and just newborn, baby. So you have two types of people. One is students who graduated finance or something like finance. There are a few engineers who are coming just from the other side, who need to be educated in finance, because they do have already knowledge about the engineering part, but not about the finance. And we have from non-banking, some students who are working in non-banking financial institutions. So the good thing is that everybody feels they need to have education on fintech. What the students are interested most are the real things. How I could make it. Could I do new fintech service? Could I use new fintech service without big risk? And what they learn most is one of the experiment I do with them. I give them everyone to choose one Bulgarian fintech company from your list of members, and one of the top 50 in the world fintech companies. And to finish with this, just to tell one example, just the day before yesterday, last week, I had a student who was doing on Revolut. So he came and said in his presentation, Revolut is going to bankrupt. So, and he was right. I mean, he offered all the financial accounts for the last 6-7 years. So, no profit, just big loss. He took from the yellow pages that the father of one of the founder had problems with Zelensky and all this Ukrainian stuff, etc., etc. He said, in my view, they're going to bankrupt. So, which I like, not the fact what he said, but the way he started thinking. So you should look at those companies from all perspectives, including from the financials, from the yellow pages and everything. And this is very successful exercise to get to the real business of fintech companies, and they really like it. At the end, they start liking, and this provokes the appetite for risk, which I find a big, big problem for our education.
All right. Talking about risk, and this would be a quick question over to Deyan. Because in Bulgaria, we are really conservative about risk, just what Professor Bobeva said. But what is the role of education when talking about controlling risk? Whether better education, higher increased financial literacy could help us control risk, and could we actually do this on a macro level in whole Bulgaria or the region here?
Well, I think the only way to improve the participation in investing of the general population is through financial education and improving financial literacy. And here I do not fully agree that not talking at all about the risks is beneficial. And sometimes I notice in my courses that people are a bit disappointed that I'm not selling them fintech products. I'm a professor in fintech and I'm not selling fintech products. But I'd like to believe that I show a balanced picture. I explain the business model, how it works, how it makes money, and then mention all the risks usually that have materialized historically through the workings of companies using this business model. But I do agree that sometimes my students react like maybe for the first time somebody is talking to them about the risks of stuff, and they completely disengage. They think that this is a bad thing, and then they even ask me, okay, after the lectures, is this a good model? Why did you have so many negative things? And my goal, as I said, it's to show the positive side. Usually that's the beauty of fintech, that in most cases the business model is very simple and how it makes money. It uses technology. It is, up to now I haven't had difficulties explaining business models. But then you have to also know what the risks about those things. And my biggest issue with having no regulation is that you are left to, people use the word Wild West recently after the collapses of many exchanges on the crypto market. But you are left to the mercy of very greedy people. And you have to know the risks. And you have to do your own due diligence. And you cannot do it if you don't know what to look for. And that is my goal. And again, it's about finding the middle ground. Not to scare people off from financial products, because I want people to reap the fruits of investment, but still make them realize that returns don't come without risk. That's how it works in finance.
All right, and according to you and in your experience, Vasily, where is the middle ground when talking about risk and when talking about education? How do you teach youngsters, or even why not people that are already retired in fintech?
I cannot say exactly how you'll teach them, but I'll say that the fine line is basically the regulator. Everything goes back to the regulations, right? If a regulator decides that one industry is a risk industry, and the EMIs, for example, and EMDs should avoid this industry, that will be taught within universities. Eventually, one way or another, will find its way within the academia, and will create a bad impression, a bad image. I can go on examples about that, about markets that are considered by regulators risk markets, but they're not really. And then let's say the adult industry. Why would that be a risk market? It's a simple transaction that takes place on a daily basis. I don't know anyone that does not consume adult, at least in the West world. Even in the Muslim countries, I'd say they still consume. Why would that be a risk industry? Nobody can explain that to me. Well, I can go on, but this is the case. Everything goes down to the regulator. And I think that the academia's place to explain to the youngsters, as you said, to the students, that not everything is black and white. And sometimes when we regulate, we create problems where they don't exist. But of course, like our colleague here, Deyan said, we need some sort of regulation, but we need to be very careful on that. I do not like regulation, and I agree with Dr. Bobeva here that it limits companies and it limits creativity, and what moves us forward is creativity, not rules. Rules are set for different reasons, and they limit creativity. So within the university, within the academia, we should teach that not everything is black and white, and of course, with initiatives such as those that BFA is promoting, we can also teach the general public that should not, even the pensioners, people the old people, like the old timers, that fintech is not something to be afraid of. rather than something to be embraced of, because it makes more sense paying with the debit card rather than waiting in a line in the bank for 5 hours to get your salary, right? That is my opinion.
Yes, go ahead.
May I ask a question? Once in my life, I was in the casino in Thessaloniki. And I saw hundreds of old people coming by buses from all over Greece and playing on these machines, spending their pensions there. During nights and days, they were staying and playing there. So that's about risk. They know that the chance to win is very small. But even though they stay and spend, I'm sure they lost more money than they win, but they stay there. So taking risk of buying financial fintech product and all these services is something much better, much more secure. At least you are going to get something at the end. And we still put barrier that old people, they cannot do this. So why don't we put those people instead of the casino to put them in something fruitful, something very nice, because fintech produces GDP. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're saying that we should use the funds of all people to invest in fintech. This is what you're saying?
Yeah, why not?
Well, I personally cannot judge that. I cannot tell you that we should do or we should not do that. What I can say is that if someone likes to do something, then somebody most likely should be doing that, right? As long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. And that was, yes, we should heavily invest in fintech, but more cautiously and not like 2020 and 21, because Dr. Radev earlier said, he's like, I don't know why investments halted this year. Well, maybe Professor and Dr. Radev, it's because many fintech companies failed. And that is because there was reckless investment, not because we have a war in Ukraine. I don't think that the war in Ukraine is affecting the fintech market, not in any way. Not our market. I think our team at least can explain to you, can showcase that we have no fall in sales or in revenue from the war in Ukraine. If anything, it boosted things, but I don't think that this is the case. So it's reckless investment in companies that don't or should not be receiving funds. But yes, I strongly believe that we should invest with the fintech, because the fintech is the future. And if we invest in fintech companies rather than regulation, we will shape the future the way we want it and the way we like it. That is my thesis here again.
Okay, and just to steer back to once again to the education part, what's all about the Center of Digital Finance, and how exactly could it help? Can we really replicate something that we see in the UK here in Bulgaria? Of course, that's a question over to Dr. Radev.
So we myself, Georgi, the FinTech Association, we're discussing how to replicate the business model of London. And some countries have done it. For instance, Lithuania, the Baltic countries are very successful to attract fintech companies. And some of them do have regulatory sandboxes, those safe spaces where you can develop your pilot model or product without the fear that at some point a regulator will come knocking to your door and start checking and then you realize that you screwed up. So the regulator constantly monitors what you're doing, tells you whether you're planning to make a mistake or not. And I think, again, we're going back to risk. And the Bulgarian National Bank is one of the most conservative banks regarding risks, maybe among most central banks in the European Union.
I agree.
Yeah.
Basel 1, 2, 3, we implemented in the worst case. I think the most conservative way.
And I think the reason for that is that people at the bank are not aware of the positive and the risky sides of innovation.
No. This comes from the past when we lost 1/3 of our banks in 97. And still in the central bank, this invisible hand of the collapse of 1/3 of your financial system is guiding everything. So it should be too strong to...
But then in order to improve our economic growth, there is a direct link proven 20, 30 years ago that financial innovation, improvement, financial development causes economic growth. So in order to boost our economic growth, we need financial innovation. So regulators have to start dealing with this risk. And I think they have abandoned it all. They're just ignoring anything that looks risky. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to build competences about it. And that is our goal. That has been our goal for the last 2 years with the FinTech Association, to try to convince them, to explain to them. I'm telling you, I'm not selling any FinTech products. I'm telling you also the risky side. So that my goal is for everyone to understand the risks, the benefits, of course, but also the risks. And then the regulator might decide, but it will be an educated decision to stop some models. And right now it's just we avoid risk, which is, of course, you can always do that. You cannot lose money if you don't invest in anything, but of course you lose money through inflation, so it's not exactly true.
Exactly.
And the issue with regulation is that what you said, that they usually ban stuff, but in order to, we had a survey with Georgi for the development of fintech in Bulgaria. We went back to the 1930s, and actually before 1989, the driver of financial innovation was the communist state and the Bulgarian National Bank. And from then on, my perception is that the National Bank has abandoned its role to build the financial infrastructure and system, or to promote innovation in a, as I said, educated way. And
do they have sandbox? I don't think so. Neither Financial Supervision Commission.
Now we are trying to convince them to implement it. And what Georgi is alluding is part of our goal for the center is to develop such a course based on our experience with fintech.
And connections, I would say.
In all universities that we teach. We compared programs, at least my course I started with the curriculums of Oxford, Stanford, I've said it many times, and just filled it in the table of contents I feel with my own stuff. And we compared now a curriculum of an institute, European University Institute. They have a foreign school of banking and finance, I think. And we noticed that actually we can offer this, and it will be just one add-on, the part on sandboxes, and we can directly offer the courses that we already offer very easily to regulators. And it's a Central European, Central and Eastern European region, so we won't offer it only to the Bulgarian regulator, but to all regulators in the region, because we are trying to build community not only in Bulgaria but as a region to be stronger, and because there are always interactions, there are always networking effects. It's one thing to have 1,000 or 11,000 smart people in Bulgaria, but then Romania is 2.5 times bigger, Greece is bigger, and if all smart people unite, and okay, they are competitors, but still the main goal is development of the region. And financial development and promotion, and we cannot do it without regulators. So that's why the name of the center is not the Bulgarian Center for
He's talking about smart people. Let me tell you, and regulators. Let me tell you, because you like regulators. what is cooked now, I would like to warn all of you, because Georgi presented that the salaries in this sector are twice as high as the average in the
gross.
country.
Yes, gross.
Yeah. So what is cooked now with OECD, because you mentioned already OECD, because they are giving, recommendations. We are at the entrance line.
Yeah.
They are going to introduce, because of OECD, and we do everything what somebody with good diplomas are telling us. They're going to introduce the progressive income tax, which means, guys, that all of you are going to be taken not 10% from your salaries, but at least 30%. So this is what is cooked now. Why so? Because somebody said that we have too many poor people and few very rich people. Who are the rich people? If you look at the statistics, you see this is the information technology sector, and this is financial sector and energy, 3 of them. So you're talking about talents. How you're going, and the colleague is just saying that we would like these young people from Bulgaria to take good positions and to innovate, to do some new things. How they're going to do if we just cut their salaries? They will go further. They will go somewhere else. So that's, please, take care for this. I'll let you know the exact time when you should jump and say no way. You're going to be hurt. The sector, this sector, will be hurt a lot from this. And we are going to lose a lot of international staff who is coming and joining this growing and good salary sector.
Dr. Bobeva, I'm sorry, that's news to us. And
this is bad news.
Yeah, that's definitely bad news, because instead, the government, what you're saying basically, instead of providing the necessary tools to the people to gain more money, they're just taking more money than the people that have the tools.
The skilled, highly skilled people, intelligent. Look at these people.
Which says a lot about the mentality within the people that regulate. Not only in Bulgaria, generally speaking.
This is purely Bulgarian. You know that in EU, taxation is national priority. No touch by EU institution. That's our
You can
own.
check the Greek taxation. It makes absolutely no sense.
All right. It's a political question that is really a tough one that I don't want to really deep dive, at least not during this panel, which is once again on education. So in that sense, a question over to Vasily, because we are close to the end of this panel. What are the future steps that the industry in Bulgaria should really take in the next year or so, 3 years, 5 years? And what do we need to see coming from private sector when talking about education? What is still missing in that sense?
Again, synergy, a better synergy with the academia, collaborate together for courses and programs in English, not only Bulgarian, but preferably in English, because it's a big tool that everybody should be speaking English. You can't require, you don't have access to high paid positions if you don't speak English, because these positions are held by people that speak English, basically. Why? Like I said, globalization. Why? Capitalism. Goes to say that we need to do that, and because if we don't do that, we're running the risk to run out of people, because you see that many people within the IT and FinTech sector in Bulgaria, they're not locals. Not because locals are not intelligent enough, but they're not enough of them. They don't have the necessary tools and skills to acquire such positions, and this is why we're searching at all time, at any given moment, we're searching for people not only from Bulgaria, but from Europe, and not only. So we need that. It's a fact that not only the skilled, but the unskilled labor in Bulgaria is going through a crisis. This is why even the industry in Bulgaria is changing the way it operates so it can accommodate unskilled women workers, because without them, even this sector, the industry, is, from what I understand, don't quote me, at risk.
All right. Your final words, Associate Professor Radev, what is, and I want to stress once again that here today on the panel we have industry and academia. Hopefully next time we will see industry, academia, and regulators or the public sector. Getting back to academia that you're part of and you represent, what are the so needed future steps that we need and that we have to see in the next couple of years? It's a question to both you, probably starting with Associate Professor, just in a phrase or two.
Well, related to what Vasily said, I think that I really admire, I do admire the approach of the Bulgarian FinTech Association that came to us, to Associate Professor Deyan Radev, to Associate Professor Marcelen Jovogan at our faculty, and saw this idea of a new master's program where we have industry participation. And at the same time, okay, we heard that regulators are bad, but actually last year the regulation regarding who can teach at universities was relaxed. So before it was only people with academic degrees who could teach. Now they allow people from the business. They allow industry-funded PhDs, projects, getting a PhD working on a project funded by the industry. And this is the way forward to me. Of course, English, that I came in 2020. I said it from the beginning, I will teach in English or won't teach at all. Because, okay, I joke with my students that I'm a dictator, but I'm a benevolent dictator. So in economic theory, you can get to the market outcome without any frictions. Either you can replicate the market outcome if you have a dictator that knows everything and it's good-willed. And maybe it's arrogant, but I have the feeling that through my experience, although my students sometimes don't realize why I expect something from them, I know what is, in most cases, good for them, and it was confirmed right now, so I'm very happy with it. So English language programs, participation of the industry, and involvement. We shouldn't be that combative with regulators. We have to, it was mentioned here, we have to realize where they come from. The banking crisis is the reason why the Bulgarian National Bank is conservative. So we have to show them why some models are worthwhile to promote and to at least allow the discussion on them. And we have a lot of tasks for the center. We can discuss it later on at other events.
Okay. Over to you.
Three things. First, to start teaching from the first grades in the baccalaureate degree. Second, within these 4 years, we have to push them starting using FinTech services. So I would like to ask everybody who is providing FinTech services to leave me his business card, so I will definitely promote using your services among my students. I have about 120 per semester, so it is a good society, because without trying, without testing, without consuming financial service provided by FinTech company, they cannot learn. So just talking to them doesn't help so much as they should use those services. What we need, and I would like to put this question to my colleague also and to Georgi. So we really need good, let's don't call them vocabularies and textbooks, but we need something, because young people are diving in information. There is so much on FinTech because it is fashionable, but sometimes those sources of information are misleading. So talking about the risk for them using this kind, building such kind of knowledge and education on not solid ground and good ground. So we need to produce sources which could help them learning, and after this basic stuff, to upgrade their knowledge in order to be part of the system. And I would like to convince you that there are really brilliant students ready to start working in your sector.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for these wise words. I believe this was a really nice ending here, a good summary of what we just discussed. And I want to once again assure all of you guys that within our association and coming from us, we have never tried to be combative or really separate ourselves from the public sector or anybody out there in the ecosystem. It's quite the contrary. As you see with the Financial Supervision Commission, we try to work as hard as possible with these people, with everything that we have. So hopefully we will see more and more people joining the ecosystem, more and more key stakeholders joining it, and really, in the end of the day, joining forces to help our financial literacy. So this was the end of this panel about education. We move forward with the next one about innovation, but let's have a 10 minutes break and then continue.